Hi, Lady Eva. Hi, maybe. Oh, maybe. Thank you for the gift. I have started reading them. I haven't gotten very far, but thank you very much. Shout out to maybe. Thank you. I tried very hard. Hi, Dad. You're no longer dead. Excellent. Good news. One of my friends is live. You should go to live together. Absolutely not. Did you now? Thank you. Is the most even I've ever gotten it. We're ready to cancel. Well, thank you very much because now I can get started on these and we'll see if they pass the test. I have high hopes considering Ray was the one that recommended them, but we're going to see how that goes and I'll get back to you. Hopefully this will be the next series because I flipped through it and I really like it and I started reading it and I was already like, okay, all right. Thank you very much for the compliment. So how are we all doing today? How is everybody feeling? Are you ready for this? Because we're about to start the last one. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm a little sad. COVID, but good. Oof. Well, I hope you get better soon, Denny. Did the thing come? I didn't see anything else. If it was supposed to go to the P.O. box, there was nothing in it. Granted, I didn't go today. I went Saturday. On a scale of ambiguousness, how will book 5 affect you? I hesitate to say anything because I might give it away. But you ever try so hard to get something done and then realize that you never really needed to do it in the first place? Feels like that. For instance, I just realized that I can finance my tires if I get them through a certain place. So I've been spending weeks saving up for new tires, only to realize that I could pay them off on a monthly basis, and now I have an excess of about $500. Sort of like that, where you feel kind of frustrated, but you're like, okay. You ever build up a food in your mind or like an experience in your mind, and then when you get it, it's not what you thought it would be. It's not exactly satisfying, but you did wish for it. Feels like that. You ever accidentally run into someone that you used to know at like a Walmart or somewhere and you're like, and you didn't hate that person, you sort of liked them, but you're like, I want to leave. I don't know you anymore. You're not the person I used to know. Kind of like that. It's a very fragmented book. I'll say that for it. It's not exactly the format you expect from reading all of the others. We'll get into it. Yeah, I know. I didn't know I could do that either. So I'm really excited. I'm going to get new tires Saturday. So, God, I wish I could have worn a different dress shirt than this one, but my other dress shirt is in the wash. I had to wash my other one because I have to wear it to a function. It's nicer than this one. And I say function in the heaviest of quotations because I don't want to be there. But I'm really excited to go through it with you all. So this is going to be a fun time. A little bit mentally scarring. You're going to come away with it with mixed feelings. But it's going to be okay because we're going to get through it together. And one of the main reasons I haven't been in such a rush to get everything done for the Johannes cosplay is because the book drop after this one, you know, after you get done with a book and you don't know where you're at in life anymore and you feel adrift mentally and emotionally and you don't know how you're going to go on, well, then we'll all be through that together. And then you'll have more content to consume from the beginning, which is a consolation, I think, for probably a fair amount of people after this series will be over. You'll feel a little dead inside, but there will be content on top of that that you haven't seen and haven't gotten before. And then I can share my theories on where I think my ideas, my personal headcanons of Johannes that I could not share with you before because it would have ruined the things specifically that happened in this one. So, hi. I am cosplaying Aizawa. Specifically, it was in the suit, but I also did like a joke video, and I ended up sort of dismantling it a little bit. Long Boy Graveyard Cat and Chunky Shadow Dragon. Excellent. The two requirements for processing mental and emotional trauma. Now, we don't get into it that quickly, but I feel like you'll be satisfied with where I broke the chapter up. Because we do have to break it up. I'm sorry, but it's true. There's just too much of it. I'll check the time, and if we can get through the entirety of chapter 1, I don't even know if I can read that long. So I broke it up. If we need to break it up. If we can get through all of chapter 1, that'd be fantastic. There's some of the chapters we're not going to get all the way through. Excellent. Paint the deep ones. I'm so excited for the game tonight. Yeah, because I have some thoughts. Especially because of the way, specifically Jonathan Howard words some things in the preface that I think that, and he has never made a statement beyond this to my knowledge or written any other content regarding Johannes after this book that I know of. But I have some ideas. I think I have feelings and I have thoughts, and I think it goes somewhere. But I'm excited to see where this goes. I'm excited to see what you guys think about it. Because then we can really get into it because you'll have all the information already. And we get to revisit some characters. So that'll be fun. Everybody all comes back together. Which I think will be fun for everyone here. If you've stuck with it. And I know the main majority of you all have. So this will be a real fun time. Also, this is going to be the last fun day I'm going to be able to have until next Tuesday when I do this again. So this is my last mental and emotional day off. Because I have to do things tomorrow I don't want to do. Normally I get 3 days off. Nope, this week I got one. Just this one. So we're going to make it count. Oh, thank you for the corgi. Say hi to Toby. Tell Toby I said hi. But if you're new and you don't know what we're doing, this is a book club. So if you came here for the cosplay, I mean, you can hang around, but I can't always guarantee I'll be very responsive because I read a book every Tuesday to the book club people. And if you aren't part of the book club, then you're going to have little to no information about what we're reading today, which is unfortunate because there were 4 previous books before this, whole books. We've spent months on this. So if you've just shown up, you're not going to know who the characters are. You're not going to know who the setup is. You're not going to know anything. And all the people in chat, I can't guarantee, are going to answer you in a non-troll-esque fashion. Especially Swiftblood. I guarantee Swiftblood is going to be sarcastic and tell you lies. So don't listen to anything Swiftblood says. No. No, but if you missed out, the basic conclusion from the last book is that Horst got reanimated by the Ministerium Tenebra, and Johannes got dragged in, uninvited, by Horst to help resolve the situation because they believed Rufus Maleficaris, who died in the first book, effectively, was involved. And then quickly realized that Lady Ninika from the second book was the leader of the Ministerium Tenebra as the Red Queen. She lured them there in as bait to basically leave a series of breadcrumbs for Johannes to follow in the form of clues, books, and research notes. So they've collected that and are now gearing up for what Johannes hopes is the resolution to reanimating his wife. And we're going to head into the 5th book here soon. Oh, wait. Swiftblood lying in chat. Yeah, Jen. We already know you. Anyway, so how ready are we on a scale of 1 to 10? Do we want to bullshit for a few more minutes or do we want to get into it? Thank you, because someone said my laugh freaked them out last week, so. Either way. Lady Aoife. It's like, I don't know, I could sit here for a few more minutes and feel it out. I don't know, it's just one of those comments I saw as they were flashing by, so. I mean 2, but like regular 2, not scale 2. Alright. Okay. I got it all figured out. I got it all blocked out for the first chapter, I think. But we might gonna be able to go a little longer. And if you don't know what we're reading, I'll go ahead and tell you. It's The Fall of House Cabal by Jonathan Howard. There are 4 other books. They're on my YouTube. You could always Google the author and read the other ones if you like. I highly recommend supporting the author. Hopefully he doesn't poison us all. No, not the Bible. Very far from the Bible. One of the farthest things from the Bible that you could possibly get, probably. But we're going to get into it. I'm going to read the preface to you, but just beforehand, because I feel like he does a really good job introducing the book, so we're going to read it. Preface. My lords, ladies, and gentlemen, boys and girls, and folk of all other persuasions, you are about to embark on an adventure wherein risks are taken and do not always succeed. where danger haunts every decision, where the stakes are high and the odds are long. You, at least, are in the happy position of not being in any personal peril during this tale, despite my suggestion to the publisher that 1 in 1,000 copies should be impregnated with dimethylmercury just to give a frisson to book purchasing. You can't just go around killing readers, they said. Not until you're selling more units, anyway, they added. Every Cabal novel that I have written has been very different from the one before it. This is partially out of deference to you, the reader. Why would you want to read the same novel but for cosmetic differences time and time again? And partially for me. Why would I wish to write the same novel but for cosmetic differences time and time again? Thus, you'll be delighted or appalled to discover that the novel you currently hold, with surgical gloves if you have any sense, is not just the same as the one that precedes it, or the one before that, or the one before that, or, I feel compelled to say, although I'm as bored with this sentence as you, the one before that. This novel is its own creature. It is also, however, a tying up of threads, as a tapestry reaches its conclusion. It is not necessarily the last Johannes Cabal novel, although it might be. It is certainly, however, the end of a phase. In the following story, the reader who has read the previous novels, and, ideally, the short stories, although that isn't a requisite, will see many things that are familiar. Some ideas are revisited and maliciously subverted. Some old characters will reemerge. Pieces slot into place. The clockwork grates, the chimes play. The penny tableau that began with Johannes Cabal the Necromancer comes to an end of sorts. The curtain rattles down, and you may all sprint for the exit before the national anthem plays. Zoltán Kodály started his opera Hari János with a sneeze, a nod to an old Hungarian superstition that a statement preceded or followed by a sneeze is the truth. He had an orchestra to perform an instrumental sneeze. I have a computer and an overabundance of fancy, thus I sneeze a cloud of electrons upon the backlit LCD screen, and the following's tale's truth is assured, just as much as the historical truth that Napoleon was captured by a lone Hungarian. We all knew that, didn't we? Of course. Here, then, is the fifth major undertaking of the necromancer Johannes Cabal. May you enjoy it in the knowledge that it is the absolute, unvarnished truth in every respect. The Grand Plan. It is a damned place, is Purkis Moor. Perched high on the spine of the country, there is little up there but sheep, and the crows that feed upon the corpses of sheep fallen in gorges, trapped in gullies, tumble down scree. The shepherds do a good enough job, but they do not enjoy their work and are happy to retire of a night to their huts of millstone grit and turfed roofs, brutal little boxes with small windows and hulking walls that seem as much defensive as simply shelters. The wind blows across Purkis Moor. It is the only thing that wanders freely, for it is a damned place, and even ramblers show little inclination to labor across the broken, unhappy earth. Ask a local, which is to say, ask anyone who lives by the moor, for no one would claim to live upon it, only to sojourn briefly until they can return to a proper place fit for decent souls. Ask a local why the place feels so baleful, so full of mindless, lolling hatefulness, and they will tell you it is haunted. The spirits of 5,000 pagan dead are trapped there, so they say, from a time before Constantine, from before Christ. A great battle fought with weapons of wood and rough iron took place there. The culmination of a war between nameless tribes for unknown reasons. They met there and offered no quarter. 5,000 dead in the grass fed by gallons of their gore. A terrible thing that scarred the land itself. A festering wound that seeps spectral blood into the here and now still, after all these years. The shepherds say sometimes at night they hear the cries in strange languages long lost from the throats of living men, the screams, the clash of weapons. The shepherds know better than to look out of their small windows and the hulking walls of their millstone grit huts on such cursed nights or storm-threatened days. What they may see can do them no good, and an immortal soul is worth far more than assuaging a moment's curiosity. The locals say no merchant traveling with his wares will cross the moor, not even in daytime, for fear of making poor progress and still being upon it when the sun dips below the distant horizon. Once, an itinerant tinker did, they say. He scoffed at the legend and set out upon the dreary sheep path with liquor in him when he really needed wit. The shepherds found him the next day, cold and dead by the path, staring up at the gray clouds, eyes and mouth open to gather the drizzle. All the rain in the world could not wash away that expression of terror, though the outward signifier of an experience that froze his blood and stopped his heart. The archaeologists say bollocks to all that. There isn't a shred of empirical evidence that such a battle ever took place. They say that it's a myth, and that old tales of a great spectral battle fought periodically upon Purkis Moor are simply the product of bored people in a boring place, making things up to entertain themselves. In this, they are largely correct. But not entirely. The tall, pale man in the black suit and walking boots caused a huge sensation amongst the locals of the Purkis Path Inn, which is to say they went a little quieter when he entered, nodded covertly at him to their drinking partners when his back was turned, and marveled at his accent, which was as alien to them as ancient Assyrian. That the accent was German says little for the cosmopolitan nature of the locals. "You'll be wanting a room, then?" The landlord leaned heavily upon the counter and glowered at the strange stranger with his fancy spectacles and gloves. The locals didn't hold with such fripperies. If the good Lord intended one to be terribly myopic, then it was not given to man to correct this defect. Much better than man wander around tripping over things. He might fall down the stairs or use bleach for flour, but at least he wouldn't die horribly in a graceless state. The man removed the blue-tinted spectacles, and it became apparent to the landlord that they were intended to protect the man's eyes from the glare of daylight. He himself had never seen the glare of daylight, but his grandfather had once told him that the sun was actually a fiercely radiant object in the sky and not merely one area of the permanent overcast that glowed slightly more strongly than the rest. In some distant foreign places like Egypt or China or Barnoldswick, it was said that sometimes the cloud cleared away and you could see the sky above and the sun, and at night bright objects that defied rational explanation. The landlord had always been of the opinion that his grandfather had been making a joke, as if such things might be in a godly world. Looking at the stranger's striking blue eyes that hinted at an incisive mind and a calloused soul, it occurred to the landlord that there might be many ungodly things in a godly world, after all. "I shall," said the man in his ungodly accent, removing his ungodly gloves and casting an ungodly eye upon the regulars, who returned their attention to their dominoes rather than suffer it for longer than necessary. He turned and looked through the mullioned window, the road beyond distorted by the bull's-eye panes and thereby rendered far more interesting than the reality. "The moor is in that direction, isn't it?" "It is." Thinking of going for a walk there later? I was considering it. Don't, said the landlord with a great satisfaction that echoed around every local's heart in the public bar. You don't want to go up there, said a drinker. Not good to go on the moor if you don't need to. Perhaps, said the stranger. I need to. Don't look much like a shepherd to me, said a dominoes player, and there was much amusement at this bon mot, the merriest thing ever said within those walls since they were raised 234 years earlier. Why? The stranger's tone was neutral. Is it haunted? The landlord leaned yet more heavily upon the counter. It would have groaned under the stress if it had had some profane foreign wood like Norwegian pine from a profane fitting showroom, but it was good English oak, and it was used to the meaty forearms of stout English yeomanry leaning heavily upon it. What if it is? The cold blue eyes turned to regard him. Tell me all about it. And he produced a good stout English 10-bob note, and all animosities were shortly forgotten. The stranger left the tavern some hours later, a room for the night secured and the locals rendered glazed and garrulous by the application of a multitude of 10-bob notes and the ale thus purchased. In truth, they had told him little he did not already know, but the investigation was not purely based upon what they said, but upon how they said it. They believed every word of it. That much was plain. Every word was, of course, nonsense, but they held those words with a fervent regard. Even the most aggressively masculine of them would not venture upon the moor at night without an excellent reason, and that intrigued and satisfied the stranger, who was Johannes Cabal, a necromancer of some little infamy. It is to be hoped that by this juncture the revelation of the stranger's identity causes the reader little or no surprise. That is, after all, the 5th novel in the series. If this is the first Cabal novel the reader has read, the author strongly advises that you go off and read the others first. Also, any other novels the author has written. This latter point is unnecessary to the reader's understanding of the plot and progress, but it would make me happy, and what soulless creature would miss an opportunity to make me happy? Certainly not the reader, I'm sure, who is wise, just, intelligent, and of above-average appearance. This job description he left off the battered ledger the inn used as a guest book, instead entering gentleman scientist. In a rational and well-ordered world, he would have been perfectly happy to write necromancer, but the world was not rational, and little enough of it was in any sort of order of which he could approve. Had he used that word, he would likely have received sour looks, poor service, and a lynch party, and so he did not. The landlord looked at the not entirely inaccurate substitute term and wrinkled his brow. So, what are you doing here? Clearly, the locals didn't hold with any of that newfangled science stuff like evolution or gravity. My current interest is folklore and legends, replied Cabal. The tales of the moor drew my attention. I am considering a monograph upon the subject. A monograph. A monograph, yes. They looked at each other, both men with secrets. Cabal's was that he had no intention of writing a monograph. The landlord's that he had no idea what a monograph was. Presently, Cabal left the inn to go for a walk and get a breath of fresh air. These claims were true, as both were unavoidable. His main aim was to carry out an experiment that was esoteric in both field and morality, true. But he would have to walk to get to the location he had chosen for the experiment, and would doubtless have to breathe one or more times en route. Cabal wore a soft Homburg in a dark gray, bearing a sedate curve, an unimposing pinch, and a small black feather in the band, the loss of which had surely not inconvenienced the bird from which it came in the slightest. His suit was dour but hard-wearing, and his boots, as mentioned previously, eminently suitable for trampling around in rough terrain. He carried a Gladstone bag and a cane topped with a tarnished silver skull. If one maintained a mental image of how a gentleman scientist might conceivably appear, it would certainly have been along the lines of Cabal's wardrobe. He walked in a brisk line along the road that bordered Purkis Moor until he was safely out of sight of the pub, and then he performed a sharp left-hand turn that took him directly into it. There was not a great deal of daylight left, but that was all to plan. He did not need to go far onto the moor itself, just up onto a ridge, and its edge that he noted on the Ordnance Survey map of the area. The area it overlooked was a natural arena, a wide, flat depression rising into the flat of the main part of the moor. A natural arena, or perhaps theater, was a better term. The vast majority of sightings of the unusual happened in or near this area. The closeness of the road was perhaps the primary explanation for the place having the most witnesses. The closeness of the pub was often mooted as the primary explanation for the sightings themselves, perhaps unkindly. Perhaps not. Having found himself a dry spot at the ridge's edge to sit upon, Cabal wasted no time tying a length of rubber tubing around his bicep, flicked the skin of the inside of the elbow to bring up a vein, and injected himself there with a syringe he drew from a sterile metal cylinder he took from his bag. The syringe contained a rare and potent narcotic that might threaten addiction if overindulged. This was not a concern. Cabal did little enough for recreational purposes as it was, and even amongst these rare hobbies and pastimes, becoming a junkie came very low upon his list of life goals. The act done, he loosed the tubing and placed it, the syringe, and its container, back within the Gladstone bag. In their stead, he removed a small tripod with telescoping legs and set it up by him. From its apex dangled a length of fine silver chain, and upon its end a small silver sphere, its surface regularly pitted in a seam around its equator where it might be unscrewed. Thus prepared, he relaxed and allowed himself to take in his surroundings, looking without seeing, hearing without listening. The day died around him, and the night grew in its stead, unhurried and unheralded. Somewhere a lonely meadow pipit called. The sound was allowed into his ears and to emerge in his awareness without him troubling to identify the bird, even down to naming it Anthus pratensis, as was his usual wont. In the common run of things, this degree of mental slackness would have been impossible to him. It was the duty of the drug that had taken intravenously to render his mind less focused, less capable, less analytical, or, to put it differently, more like those of normal people. He relaxed as deeply as he was capable, a great deal more deeply than he might have managed without narcotic aid, and measured his breaths, focusing entirely on the steady meter of inhalation, exhalation. He allowed the outside world to become nothing, the interior not much more than that. He sought a state of semi-consciousness, in which his awareness of the mundane was blunted, and his perception of those things less mundane, equivalently, sharpened. Beside him, the silver plum upon its silver chain swung gently in the light evening breeze that blew up across from the moor before him. Presently it stopped moving with a sudden shudder and hung canted at an angle of some 20 or so degrees from the vertical. Slowly, quivering as if base iron is in a strong magnetic field, it swung degree by degree upward, further still, up until it was pointing directly into the center of the large low basin before him. Cabal was unaware of it, but that didn't matter. The tripod was not some manner of indicator, although it could fulfill that role too. It was more in the nature of bait. Somewhere far, far away, and yet so very close at hand, the note of a sword striking a sword sounded. Cabal heard it, but his eyes had sunk shut, and he did not trouble to open them. Not yet. The time was not yet. A scream now, a single solitary scream of mortal agony, and the fear of death brought close and immediate. It died away, as the man who had once screamed it must also have died away. The whinnying of terrified horses rose in a faint chorus borne to him on the breeze. The clang of swords, both great and broad, echoed above it. The dull battering of a struck shield, the rattling of the horse's tack and barring. Cabal's face showed some small phantom of emotion, specifically disgust. There was a sound like thunder, but it was the roar of cannon. Ancient artillery firing in an ancient battle. Cabal's pupils could be discerned through his eyelids as small bumps in the skin, and these bumps swung high and around. Cabal was rolling his eyes. The individual sounds grew together, forming a soundscape, an auditory painting in action. Men grunted, horses snickered, blows were given and taken, warriors killed and died. The timbre grew, the sounds became more distinct. The silver pendulum pulled so hard toward the sounds, so filled with unnatural vivacity, that only the fact that the tripod's legs were ended in spikes driven into the sod kept it upright at all. When the phantom battle was all but bellowing in Cabal's face, he deigned to open his eyes. And there it was in all its spectral glory, the great battle of Purkis Moor, more sharply defined than any man or woman had ever seen, this thanks to the precision of Cabal's preparations. Men-at-arms clashed with knights, musketeers of the English Civil War engaged Roman legionnaires, naked men painted in blue woad charged Napoleonic artillery pieces and were duly cut down by grape-shot. It was, in purely historical terms, at any rate, bollocks, just as the archaeologist had always said. It was also, just as they had said, very exciting indeed if one's job consisted of watching sheep for lengthy periods. Perhaps once, a very long time ago, there had been some small fight here. Not even necessarily a fatal one. Perhaps Og of the Stone tribe had grunted something needlessly deprecatory about Ugg of the Fur tribe's mother, and Ugg, who loved his mother dearly, although not in the manner alluded to by Og, had struck him smartly in the face, putting him on his arse with a split lip. In the retelling, the blow had become a fight, the fight a skirmish, the skirmish a battle, a pebble of truth, gathering the moss of invention as it rolled down the years. And people were so stupid, they couldn't tell one period from another. Cabal had once seen an early medieval Bible lovingly illustrated with men and women dressed in clothes contemporaneous with the age in which it was created. Jericho was shown being besieged with siege engines 1,000 years out of their time. In unaccountable minds' eyes down the centuries, the Battle of Purkis Moor was fought in whatever best pleased the daydreamer. Knights in gleaming armor to please the heart of Mallory, soldiers of the War of Roses, swords and spears, crossbows and muskets, rocks and rockets. It hardly mattered. All that was important was that the device worked. He wasn't even convinced that the drug had been necessary and would try the operation again the following evening, this time without. In the meantime, the drug hadn't so purged him of reason that he couldn't be judgmental of the sideshow for fools playing out before him. This was the least of examples, he was sure. One clumsily glued together by generations of unimpressive intellects. He was after greater fare. Out there were 5 particular sites, and his suspicion was that they had been created deliberately by methods that escaped him. Not that he needed to know, of course. He had no great interest in replicating such things, only in exploiting them. Exploiting 5. It was no small undertaking. They would be cathedrals of the intellect as compared to Perkis Moore's small mud hut. In a single movement, Cabal took up the tripod and slid home its legs against a stone, closed it, flicked some small fragments of soil adhering to the spikes clear with a gloved finger, and put the device back into his bag. As he did so, the battle suddenly attenuated, its combatants thinning out like magic lantern projections when the curtain is drawn back and the daylight re-enters the room. Now they looked like ghosts, and now they looked like suggestive shapes in the evening mist rising from the damp land, and now they were gone altogether. Cabal cared not a jot. His main concern was how on earth he was supposed to entertain himself for a full day in a place as devoid of interest as Perkis Moor. After all, it was only haunted, and the ghosts were boring. A week later, 2 mourners stood by an open grave in a concrete field and looked down upon a glass coffin and that held a beautiful corpse. "My God," said one, dead himself. "She's perfect, just as she was." "I made no mistake," said the other, dead himself once, half dead, on enough occasions to be worth several more extinctions. Yet now he was living and vital because some people are just jammy like that. "I have never made a mistake when she was concerned, at least." And here he paused and frowned at a painful memory. "No mistake in method or theory. There are other mistakes possible, however. The metaphysics of my endeavors are far from clear or simple. The first man, a monster by some authorities, a good chap by all the rest, smiled a sympathetic smile. "You speak of the morality of it?" "I do. The second man was only considered a monster by the law in most churches, and who were they to judge him anyway?" "It used to be simple. She is dead, therefore I move heaven and earth to save her." "Simple," echoed the other. "And yet, despite the clear practical problems involved in my practices, it transpires there are philosophical matters to consider too. Once I discounted philosophy as a pastime for earnest young men with unconvincing beards and the besweatered young women who hang upon their every word. For old men in barrels on top of pillars. I have made war upon angels and demons, and worst of them all, humans, to arrive at this juncture. And yet it was only recently that I realized there is a pressing question that I had never once addressed, nor even considered. Would she actually wish to be brought back to the land of the living?" "Those are heavy matters indeed," said the first, who was a vampire, a nice one. "Indeed," said the second, who was a necromancer. They pondered in silence. Finally, the vampire said to the necromancer, his brother, "Is besweatered actually a word?" They replaced the great stone cover upon the concrete grave and went to leave the hidden laboratory adjoining the cellar of the house of Johannes Cabal, the necromancer. As they left the laboratory and made their way through the cellar, the vampire, Horst, paused by a large barrel, a butt of the type popular from the drowning of dukes. This example, however, did not contain an awkward rival for the throne of Richard III pickled in Malmsley wine. Horst laid his hand on the wood of the barrel's head, a little guiltily. "This seems very undignified in comparison." Cabal knew his brother well enough to detect the forced lightness in his tone. He did not comment on it. Instead, he said, "Practicality was the concern. The barrel was handy and undoubtedly made her transport across the continent a great deal easier. It's just as good a container as a glass coffin. Better, perhaps. It's certainly a great deal less fragile." "You're not going to, Horst made vague gestures with his hands, as if pouring out a bucket. "Decant her, then." "I am not," said Cabal. "Doing so would be a risky operation for little gain beyond that, I admit, the aesthetic. In any case, from what I know of Fraulein Bartos's personality, I think she would prefer the barrel. Glass coffins are for fairy tale princesses, not someone as pragmatic as she." Horst nodded, reassured. It wasn't necessary for his brother to explicitly state that Alicia Bartos had been a trained killer, practiced agent, and decent conversationalist. Had been, and would be again, if Johannes Cabal could keep his promise. In an ideal world, the reader would have the common courtesy to have read all the previous novels in the series, and retain sufficient of the plot of that pithy summation would be necessary. As has been noted by observers more perspicacious than the author, however, it is far from an ideal world, and a distinct proportion of those reading these words will have more pressing matters than to avail themselves of the 4 novels preceding this one. To these people, the author says, "Yes, 4. You jumped in at book 5. What do you like?" Thus, it falls upon the author, as diligent and kind as he is handsome and effortlessly virile, to offer a brief summation of previous events to aid these readers. Who starts at book 5? I ask you, as well as those who have read the preceding novels and would simply like their memories refreshed. Johannes Cabal was once very nearly a solicitor, but a kindly fate saved him from this terrible future by killing his best beloved. She drowned, should you be curious, or just morbid. Grief-stricken, Cabal refused to accept the generally accepted absoluteness of death, and instead turned to certain esoteric, occult, and highly illegal paths of possibilities. One such path took him to a remote, shunned graveyard where he was forced to abandon his brother Horst in a crypt wherein dwelt a vampire. Horst destroyed the monster, but not before he was contaminated. Thus, Horst vanished from the purview of man. Missing, believed dead, which was both true and not true, his loss splintered Die Familie Cabal. His father sank into a dreadful melancholy that ended with his premature death. His mother denounced the younger and less favored son, Johannes, before leaving England and returning to her birthplace in Hesse, Germany. All of this troubled Johannes Cabal less than perhaps it ought. Rather than doing anything to rectify matters, he instead relocated the family house by curious means from the middle of a terrace in a provincial English town to a lonely hillside in open country, by which he gained the solitude necessary to continue his studies. He gained the knowledge to perform such research, and indeed commit wanton acts of urban redevelopment by the simple expedient of selling his soul. Presently it transpired that this was a mistake, and that his soul was actually of use to him. Using a potent mix of ruthlessness, immorality, deception, diablerie, and candy floss, he was able to reclaim his soul. In so doing, he upset Satan. If only that were the only time he had upset a major otherworldly entity. At least Cabal had recovered his brother Horst from the ancient crypt in which he had been abandoned, albeit for selfish ends. Unhappily, there were words and hurt feelings, and Horst died, utterly and finally. Until he got better, and this was as great a surprise to him as to anyone else, resurrected by a shadowy conspiracy, as distinct, presumably, from one of those highly publicized conspiracies. Horst was put in the difficult position of asking his brother to help save the world from the machinations of the conspiracy in general and of its prime mover in particular, a woman of means, intellect, and profound wickedness, known as the Red Queen. To his surprise, Johannes seemed older. This was because he was older, wiser, and altogether more human than Horst remembered. His experiences having mellowed him at least a little, he readily agreed to help Horst and his allies, and the world was saved. Saved again, strictly speaking, as it turned out. Johannes Cabal had done it a couple of times before, usually by accident. The victory was not without sacrifices, however. One such was Alicia Bartos, currently perfectly preserved by a strange chemical in a large barrel. Horst had developed a fondness for her. She had once shot him and then apologized nicely, but more pressingly felt responsible for her death. Nor, however, was the victory without spoils. Johannes Cabal had recovered a book so rare that he had believed every copy had long since been lost or destroyed, the one true account of Presbyter Johannes by his own hand. This, you may rest assured, is a very important book. Why that should be has not been revealed to date, but probably shall be sooner rather than later. After all, Johannes Cabal, a necromancer of some little infamy, has rested much stock upon it and enthused in uncharacteristically vigorous terms how it changes everything without actually being overly specific about why that should be. And so, we are up to date. If you have read the previous novels, I hope that has successfully refreshed your memory. If you have not and have just lurched in here like a drunk into a cinema half an hour after the program began, sit down and shut up. You're disturbing the patrons. We may now continue. But not really, because we're actually going to take a little break. Summary has a very Douglas Adams vibe. Glad you're all caught up, Denny. I thought you might like the recap. Paul, what are you doing here? You lurched in here like a drunk in book 5. Sorry. This is very funny. Considering how I just called out everybody who has not been in here for the past 4 books. Great timing, Paul, as always. Hi, how are you? Glad you could make it. I'm unconscious. I was sort of peeking at chat, but I only caught a couple of comments. I heard somebody say something, and then Lady Eva said to tell me when there was a break, and I don't know what was said. Did we lose a person? I believe we lost one. We're about to get into the good stuff, though, so I wanted to stop there. Yeah, I did that deliberately. I really like giving him his voice for all the other ones. I was being complimentary. Oh, thank you. Oh, someone complimented me. I know. I thought the summary was great. I almost hesitated to summarize it before we started, but I knew someone would ask if I did not. And I didn't want to go through the whole Perkis Moore thing and then have someone be like, you didn't do a recap. And I was like, yes, I'm aware. I'm aware. Sorry, there's a bunch of stuff happening in the Discord right now. Paul, I wasn't actually trying to be mean. You can hang out in here. I know sometimes you stop by to be supportive. You're good. I wasn't actually ripping on you. Aw. Yeah, I wasn't sure what was going on, but I saw one person comment repeatedly, but I couldn't read it very well out of the corner of my eye. And once I start reading, I like to continue reading, or else I have a lot more to edit. AKA, that's why I have not uploaded the last live I did in Aizawa yet, because I have to edit it, because I interrupted myself, because maybe remembered a knitting term halfway through, and I interrupted myself. And now I have to crop that out, and I gotta find out where it is. So I gotta edit it extra special, slow, like. But I'm getting there. I'm also working on the project that I'm actually being paid to do. Unfortunately, I don't get paid to do TikTok stuff, which is unfortunate. If TikTok paid me, I'd do it more. But unfortunately, I do have to work on the project that I'm actually being paid to do. Thank you. I actually started putting it on, and then Dave was like, it actually looks better because you have more facial hair and it fills it out. Adds texture. And I was like, thank you. Thank you. I just got chin hair. We'll pay you in caffeine. Oh, that's the best kind of payment, almost. It was a great intro. I was like, yeah, because it was right in the middle, and I was like, in the middle of a fucking sentence, and I looked up, and I was like, that's it. I remember I did that, but I cannot find out where I did it, so I have to find it. There are kittens in the... Oh, I can't leave this live right now. If I leave the live ends. If you all leave the live, you can come right back. I'll have to view kittens later. Expect packages sometime at the end of the week. Well, that'll be fabulous. I have a very unfortunate event I have to go to tomorrow. And I won't be back until Friday. So I'll have something to look forward to, and that makes me happy. Yes. I've also been filming all day, so I haven't been able to check up on anything that's been happening. So I will have to look through that later. Yes, it is terrible. Don't invite me to anything. This is absolutely abominable. I'm going to have to go out in public with people I don't like. I'm going to have to dress nice. I'm going to have to... I don't mind dressing nice. I like a good suit. And, that's fine. Bonus points if I can drink. Yes, you should do that. That's the best way for me to cope. Bigger box. All right. I will be on the lookout for packages. Thank you all so much for the stuff. I know that I'm like 3 separate people have said they're sending me stuff. Maybe it's already sent me this. And, I have the feeling that's not all I'm getting from maybe either. And I'm so excited. I have new reading material. I haven't had a whole lot of new reading material in a hot minute, and I'm so excited to get into these. And I've already started the first one. And with any luck, this will be our next. Okay, because you were mentioning like gift wrapping paper and shit, so I was very confused. Mine out next week. Oh, okay. I'm so confused about who said what and stuff and what I should... Mine out next week. Oh, okay. I'm so confused about who said what and stuff and what I should be looking at and what I should be looking at and what I should be looking for and what I shouldn't be and what's for other people and what's for, like I'm going to have to make a couple of pit stops to drop some stuff off, I think, is what I'm going to have to do. Which will be great. I already gave Nodi a little bit of anxiety, I guess. I was like, yeah, my followers are going to send you something. And they were like, what? What? And I was like, my followers are going to send something to my P.O. box. And they were like, okay. There we go. Okay, that's what I was expecting. I just want to make sure I don't miss anything, because then the real tragedy is you guys paying for something, it doesn't get delivered, or something goes wrong, and then I don't even know that I'm expecting it, and then I don't get it, and you don't know that I don't get it. And then we have like a post office problem that never gets resolved, and you just wasted your money. So, but I do appreciate all the gifts. I really resolved, and you just wasted your money. So, but I do appreciate all the gifts. I really do. I have never been given so many gifts in my life. I'm a kid that used to get like coffee for Christmas. And I love coffee for Christmas, but I don't mean like good strange brew coffee. I mean like a bag of Dunkin', and they're like, here you go, kid. That's so. I'm not used to being given gifts that I actually like and look forward to, and people put thought into them. And so it really means a lot. It really does. And I appreciate you guys so much. And I love every single thing that I get. And I have a whole. Anyway, thank you. Bartholomew is here. Good cat. Okay. You don't have to do that. I'm just saying I appreciate what you do. Mine doesn't have a name, but you'll know it's from me. I appreciate what you do. Mine doesn't have a name, but you'll know it's from me. Okay. But I'll have to be on the lookout for stuff, is what I'm saying. I gotta remember to go to the post office if I know there's something there. So I have to coordinate. A lot of the time, I'll just dip from work. I'll just leave work and be like, well, I'm kind of going near the post office. I can just scoot on over there, pick stuff up really quick. And then I end up ditching work for a hot minute, and then going and picking up everything in my P.O. box, putting it in the back of my car, and then running around with a bunch of packages in my back seat. So, lost connection. What? Is my connection good, you guys? TikTok just gave me the message. TikTok just gave me the unfortunate message. We good? No, TikTok just told me my connection was dipping. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. How is that? Okay. Is it working now? Was a little 3, but it settled again? Okay. Good. Seems good now? Okay. Okay. Good. A lot of the time, my data connection is better than my Wi-Fi connection, so I'll just use my cell phone data. Sorry, I hit the microphone. Okay. Good, good, good. I connected to my cell phone data instead of my Wi-Fi so that I can, I think, be a little more reliant. What kind of candle do I have? Oh, this is a clove candle. It's from a local shop around here, but the scent is clove. Is my microphone not working? Is my microphone working? We good? Okay. Oh, and the coffee. Okay. Let me preface this by saying, I know what I'm about. I know that I am a trash raccoon, okay? There's a local there's a local orchard and they sell coffee, a specific brand of coffee that I get there every year. They don't really sell it in a whole lot of stores, and most of it is just local businesses. Now, they make a new one that I just got, and it slaps, and it's like a Christmas flavor. I know it's not Christmas. Anyway, but it's like a gingerbread flavor. Okay, hear me out. You mix that with it's not Jamaican me create Bushwhacker. There we go. It's next, all the Strange Brew are next to each other, but you mix that with Bushwhacker. Tastes like a Christmas cookie with rum in it. If you ever wanted to know what it felt like to be a drunk gingerbread man, that coffee is it. It's a solid mix, and I know they're two different grounds, okay? And so I don't want you all to get it twisted, okay? I am a trash human being, but I know what I'm doing. I just ground the other one into a finer ground with the coarse so that it didn't mix with the, you know what I'm saying. I got it the consistency I want. I am a drunk gingerbread man. I know what I'm doing. Hi. I'm so glad you're here. I haven't seen you in a while. I hope you're well. I always make the effort, though. I'm going to go the extra mile. If I'm going to be a drunk gingerbread man, I'm going to do it right. Anyway, but Strange Brew mixed with the Christmas gingerbread was so good. I'm almost out. Not of the coffee altogether, just out of this current cup. I have water over here right now. I have been drinking water. I hydrate every day. Okay. I still have plenty of Bushwhacker left, which is a miracle because I mix that with everything. My first thought whenever I get anything new, depending on the flavor profile, is can I mix this with Bushwhacker? Because that's one of hands down my favorites. I found another one that I want to mix with Bushwhacker too, and this one's called Wake the Dead. And I'm gonna mix that with Bushwhacker next. It's gonna taste like a drunk zombie. I just know it. That doesn't make any sense. It makes sense to me, probably nobody else. I'm gonna taste like a drunk zombie. Okay. It is very strong, which is one of the things that I really enjoy about it. So. Oh, that was a TikTok comment. I was like, why did my phone do that? That was aggressive. All right. Are we ready to dive back in to... Well, we're still in Chapter 1. Chapter 1, Part 2. Yeah, so none of us have been staying nourished without you, because you haven't been here. No. All right, 2. The grandfather clock chimed midnight as they emerged from the cellar door and made their way to the front parlor. Cabal was nocturnal by habit. It was when the cemeteries and graveyards were most fruitful for his visits, and Horst by nature. Sunlight caused him to burn rather than tan, burn in a brief moment of incandescence, leaving naught but dust and regrets. Horst was taking things as restfully as possible, delaying the inevitable moment when needs would be he would seek blood. Even when that happened, he would take it carefully, a jigger here, a mouthful there, so as not to inconvenience anyone. His brother's material needs were less troublesome, and he went to the kitchen to assuage them with a pot of Assam tea and a plate of cold meat and pickles. Horst sank into his favorite armchair and awaited Cabal's return. While he waited, he regarded the deep alcove by the fireplace and the high shelf there. Upon it was a row of 3 wooden boxes, each large enough to contain a human head. This is not a fanciful metric. 2 did contain human heads, and the third, something head-like that may have well been a head. Johannes Cabal was cagey on the subject of its contents. Whatever it was, it had a good singing voice. To the right of it was the living skull of the hermit and sage Iracusides, whose voice was a little reedy, but he tried all the same, bless him. The third box contained the living head of Rufus Maleficaris, although his was not the spirit that animated it. That was an entity of awful malevolence that had sought on several previous occasions to bring the apocalypse to Earth, that loathed Johannes Cabal with a savage intensity, and that couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. Now it was forced to occupy the head of a former rival of Cabal's, and spent its days sulking, voicing threats and imprecations, and utterly failing to hit even Middle C with any reliability. The thing in the first box's hopes for, with the addition of a hypothetical future fourth box, a barbershop quartet had foundered on the head of Rufus Maleficaris, massacring Carolina Moon. For the moment, however, the boxes were quiet, but for a quiet, burring snore from the second and subdued spasmodic expletives from the third, Cabal returned with his supper. As he arranged his plate and saucer to his satisfaction upon the table, he noted Horst's languid gaze up at the shelf. The erstwhile Herr Maleficaris turns out to be as poor a loser in the afterlife as he ever was when he had a body beneath his neck, Cabal commented. His father was no better. You decapitated him too? Horst's tone was no more astonished than if his brother had suggested he had taken up golf. Far less so, in fact. I did not. I don't make a habit of that, you know. Horst regarded the row of boxes. Of course you don't. There is a certain degree of coincidence with regard to living heads in my line of work, I'll grant you. Still, they are hardly unknown in occult circles. Bacon's head of brass leaps to mind, for example. Horst was not agreeing, as he had no idea as to whom Cabal referred. He was, however, remembering that he had once liked bacon and grieved privately that it could no longer be part of his diet. So, he said, stirring himself from memories of bacon sandwiches past, has that book turned out to be as useful as you thought it would be? Are the secrets of the universe unveiled? No, said Johannes Cabal. Too easy, eh? Too easy. I'm sure I have impressed upon you in the past what the word occult actually means. You have. It means hidden. He saw Cabal's raised eyebrow. You see, I do listen. Now and then. Much of that hidden quality is not on the part of nature or the supernatural. Wizards, sorcerers, witches, and oracles have seen things for which the common herd are neither prepared nor tolerant. For their own safety, such people are inclined towards secrecy. I can only sympathize. Many am I more potentially contentious, incriminating. Notes are enciphered for exactly those reasons. So, Presbyterian Jack's big book of magic is in code. Is that what you're saying? Presbyter Johannes, often called Prester John. Let's call him Prester John, to avoid confusion. Quite, yes, that would be sensible. Cabal stirred his tea and took a sip. It isn't exactly enciphered, but it is in code. It uses allegory and allusion to hide its truths, mostly very esoteric imagery, highly arcane. I have been working to squeeze sense from it. Horst could see this was no more than the truth. Cabal's sunken face and darkly rimmed eyes betokened near exhaustion. Horst was dead to the world during the hours of light and could not know what his brother did in that time, but it seemed to contain little enough sleep. You should rest, Johannes, he said it gently. You're no use to anyone if you burn the candle at both ends. I have no time for rest. Make some. The gentle tone slipped a little, leaving something steelier in its place. Don't make me compel you. Cabal looked up sharply at him. You wouldn't dare. I'm still the elder of us, even if you're the one who looks older now. I won't watch you work yourself to death, especially having brought you back from the brink once recently already. I have better things to do than nurse you through another convalescence. Don't even joke about exerting any of your talents upon me, brother. I do not take well to coercion. There was an awkward silence. In truth, Horst had indeed used his vampiric powers to force his brother into deep recuperative sleep when he had been seriously ill some weeks before. This he would never tell Johannes. For his part, Johannes had strong suspicions that Horst had done exactly that. This he would never tell Horst. He was damn sure he would never permit it while in good or at least moderate health, however. Cabal coughed. In any case, it would be an unnecessary measure. I have wrung what truth I can from the book. I am reasonably confident that I have all of it. I shall attend to my health and well-being at this point. You are, quite accidentally, right for once. The trials I foresee shall require my constitution to be at peak. Horst, who had been slouching back with his hands behind his head, sat up. Trials? What do you mean? I thought that book was meant to be the be-all, end-all. The Philosopher's Stone, you called it, the Fountain of Youth. So I believed. I was wrong, but in some ways right. I have told you of my time in the Dreamlands. Horst nodded. Zebras. Of all the aspects of that long and perilous journey, your first thought is of the zebras. Yes, then. The place with the zebras. The nature of the dreamlands is that they are formed from the will of sleepers, not all benevolent, not all human. It is concrete enough, but mutable, and that mutability is a function of belief. The dreamlands gain much of their permanence from being what they are anticipated to be. Yes, said Horace slowly, uncertain as to the relevance. The waking world impinges upon the dreamlands. Indeed, many physical entities may gain entrance directly to them. Ghouls, for example. Here, a glimmer of fond remembrance passed across his face. And gods, the glimmer vanished. Cabal stared at a cold cut of beef and its pickled red cabbage accompaniment as if he held it personally responsible for some tragedy in his life. He sighed. The point is that what is not may be, and that which is may not. Oh, said Horst. They sat in silence for a minute. You have no idea what I'm talking about, do you? Said Cabal. Not a sausage. I am trying to say, in words of as few syllables as possible, that the principles of the dreamlands hold some sway in the waking world. They may even be extrusions. This latter point I do not know, and nor do I care to find out. That they exist is all that matters. Now Horst started to get an inkling of what his brother was proposing, and his expression was suitably startled at the revelation. Hold on. Are you suggesting that there are places in the world that don't actually exist? Cabal looked at him coldly. If you say, like Norwich or similar, I shall not be responsible for my actions. Horst seemed insulted. The very thought! He had about to moot Swindon. As I say, I do not know whether these locations are outposts of the dreamlands or simply called into being by a similar process. It hardly matters. They will not be found on any map, that much I know. They exist in between the here and the now, edge on like the blade of a knife. If you don't know where to find them, you never shall. How did this Prester John fellow find all these places, then? He didn't. He wrote a book about it. He didn't exist. He never existed. Horst took in this intelligence with difficulty. How did he manage to write a book, then? You're forgetting that of which I spoke earlier. Allegory and illusion. Have you ever heard of Prester John before? Horst shrugged. I don't know. I think I have. Probably. Sounds familiar. Something to do with the Crusades. Wasn't he? Yes, Gold Star. I would ask you not to patronize me, said Horst. But that would be like asking you not to breathe. Carry on. Simply put, thanks ever so simply put, he was the best hope of Christian Europe when the Muslims were being such a threat to them in the 13th century. They had the Holy Lands, they had spread along North Africa and into Spain, and there was the real possibility that they would spread further still. The Crusades were partially about reclaiming the Holy Lands in general, and Jerusalem in particular, but the core of their purpose was to halt the threat. It was a real threat, too. The forces arrayed under the Crescent were far more coherent than those under the Cross. The royal houses of Europe had spent so long bickering and warring amongst themselves, they were taken surprise by an external threat. They were desperate. So, when a rumor of previously unknown Christian empire in the East started to circulate, people were desperate enough to believe in it. An empire under a Christian ruler properly known as Prester John, who had successfully defeated the Muslims in the East and now wished to ally himself with Europe to fight the Muslim in the West. Cabal drank some tea. A shame, then, that he didn't exist, and neither did his empire. That must have been a bit of a blow. You know how the Crusades turned out. Yes, I think we can safely say it was a bit of a blow. That didn't stop people believing in Prester John, however. It didn't stop them from wanting to believe. A letter was delivered decades later claiming to be from the same Prester John. You see how wishful thinking starts to develop supernatural overtones. In this letter, the author describes his empire. It is full of the most remarkable wonders, including, and here Cabal paused dramatically, the Fountain of Youth. So the Fountain of Youth doesn't exist. Did I say that? You said Prester John's empire didn't exist. I said Prester John didn't exist. Attend more closely, Horst. Horst huffed with exasperation. May I just say that I am very confused at this juncture? That is why I am a scientist and you are a fop. Now, the Orient was becoming less of a mystery to Europeans by this time, and its lands were being mapped. Cartographers looked around and saw there was no possible place that this marvelous empire could possibly exist, and reported as such. This again constituted a bit of a blow. So that was it for the legend of Prester John. No. Horst's expression was of somebody trying to play a game wherein the other player keeps remembering rules that tip things in his favor. No, they just locally exist. The wonders listed in the letter purporting to be from Prester John are not parts of a single empire. They are all pockets of ontological happenstance, including... He looked keenly at Horst. For once, his brother did not disappoint him. The Fountain of Youth? Cabal smiled a smile of harsh satisfaction. And what is youth if not vitality? What is it if not life? The smile faltered. My tea's gone cold. This was not the most glamorous job they had ever been engaged upon. But for the two men lurking in shrubbery just below the crest of the hill, nor was it the worst. They were encamped on the other side of the hill and only lit a fire during the hours of darkness, its light baffled by an impromptu wall of stones, its smoke hidden by the night. They had food for a few days and supplemented it with locally caught rabbits, roots, and berries. They were used to living rough, and the English countryside was a great deal less rugged than the Cadamenian forest, to which they were accustomed. It was, therefore, something of a busman's holiday to them, used to, as they were, to living hand-to-mouth, waylaying strangers, and avoiding the law. All they had to do was keep an eye on the house across the valley from their encampment, and should the owner leave, go to the nearby village and report the fact by telegram. Leave, that is, with luggage. Their leader, their employer, their owner, was not interested in trips to buy a bottle of milk and a loaf. These were logged in haltingly formed letters scrawled into a notebook, but were of insufficient import for concern. If, however, he left with luggage, including, probably, something coffin-sized and likely at night, they were to report this with alacrity. It did not do to fail in orders, not even in the slightest detail. Their employment was profitable, it was true, far more than they would have believed possible even a year before. But the other side of the coin was a level of discipline to which the wise had adjusted quickly. It was, after all, a dangerous, even fatal, mistake to disappoint the Red Queen. The book details. Cabal paused to reconsider his words. The book implies methods by which these splinters may be located. Are these like little pocket universes, Johannes? Horst had his best serious face on, and it was a reasonable question. Like that one with the drizzle and the croquet. You remembered that? No, not really. The Eternal Garden and its cousins. That place has a name? It does. I just coined it. The Eternal Garden and its cousins are constructs, very deliberately created by wit, wile, and a lot of mathematics. The splinters of reality to which the book refers are more natural in their creation. They are literally the stuff of legend, the creations of a mass gestalt, not necessarily, as I hinted earlier, of human intellect. They are of a feather to the hidden places of the Fae and share many of the same dangers. "Oh, goody," said Horst. "I was wondering when we get on to the dangers. Come on, then. What are we likely to encounter?" Cabal was pleased that his brother was so engaged upon the project at hand and that he easily used "we" when describing the approaching travail. He gave no indication of that pleasure, however. It would never do to give Horst the impression, truthfully though it might have been, that he both required and wished his brother's involvement. The usual: monsters, death traps, riddles, plentiful opportunities for daring do. What an interesting definition of usual you have. It isn't by choice, brother. These are places created, as much as anything, by an unconscious yearning for the impossible and the certainty that any fruit worth the taking will not be easily plucked. We shall be confronting the results of millennia of human ingenuity, willfulness, and malice. Nor just that of humans. We shall tread in the shadows cast by campfires and their stories of the tales of minstrels and every idiotic blood-soaked fable told by an elder sibling to terrify the younger. Here Horst scratched his jaw and regarded Cabal from under a censorian brow. "You're not still looking under the bed before retiring, are you? Anyway, given your line of work, I'd have thought that was a good habit to get into. Lord only knows what ghosties and ghoulies and long-legged beasties you've stirred up in your time. I tend to shoot them at the time of stirring. It saves later unpleasantness." "Never put off an unpleasantness until tomorrow, and you can be unpleasant today?" Cabal shrugged. "In principle, yes. There is another consideration." Thank heavens, it was all beginning to sound so easy. "The Lady Ninika." Horst sat up suddenly. "The Red Queen?" "I suppose she's a de facto queen now, Queen Ninika of Mercarvia. That country seems to have no luck at all. If only you had slain her while you had the chance. It was an unwise thing to say." "I didn't have a chance. You weren't there. Don't be so bloody ignorant." Horst sat back into a lowering attitude, unusual for him. Cabal belatedly remembered something he'd come across once. It was called diplomacy, and it was, in principle, lying as an instrument for making people feel not quite so ill done to. This would seem to be an ideal situation on which to apply such a discipline, as it occurred to Cabal that not only had Horst failed to kill Ninika, which was embarrassing enough, but that the woman Alicia Bartos, currently to be found occupying a barrel in the cellar, had died in that encounter, and that Horst may have harbored some sort of emotional attachment to her. Perhaps diplomacy was the correct tactic to employ at that moment, Cabal concluded. Thus, steeled in his intent, he hazarded an attempt at this exciting new conversational form. "It wasn't your fault," he said, and rested from his labors. It didn't seem to have entirely worked. "I didn't want to kill Ninika anyway. That's not the sort of person I am, Johannes. Sort of had vague ideas about arresting her, capturing her. The Mercarvians have been hurt by her far more than anyone else. They deserve to put her on trial. If they want to string her up at the end of it, that's their concern. I'm not some sort of executioner." Cabal was hardly listening. Horst had entirely failed to appreciate the delicacy and elegance of his utterance, and was instead blathering about failing to kill Ninika. Holding down his exasperation at his brother's errant twittery, he said, No, I wasn't talking about Ninika. I was talking about you getting the Bartos woman killed." The short pause that ensued was more than sufficient to assure Cabal that there was far more to this diplomacy malarkey than he had perhaps given credence. "Not that you did, he added. Horst anger flared across his face and passed in a flicker to be replaced by a dour acceptance that this was his brother he was talking to, and the lifetime of making allowances that this betokened. "That's your idea of diplomacy, is it?" he asked. Cabal shrugged. "Perhaps." "Let's just skip that whole unhappy episode and get back to what you were saying, shall we?" Cabal shrugged. "Yes, let us do that." Notes. There were none. Ninika's scientific library was idiosyncratic to say the least. About a third of the books made no sense in context. Popular history's dreadful calumnies, much like the same where necromancy is concerned, they had no place there. The rest, however, were sensible choices, including a couple of rarities. "Like the Prester John book?" Here Cabal paused and seemed troubled. "No, it is a great rarity, to be sure. Indeed, the only extant copy, as far as I know, but it is not a book of necromancy. I only recognized its great utility to my researches due to a great deal of reading and peripheral references." He looked deeply perplexed. "It has taken me years to reach that point, Horst. Is she really such an extraordinary prodigy as a necromantrix that she arrived at the same conclusion so much more quickly and then was able to actually procure the rarest of texts?" "It's possible," said Horst, deploying the meanest slivers of tact under the circumstances. If he meant to sting his brother by the unavoidable implication, he was disappointed. Cabal was too wrapped up in conjecture to notice. "Possible, of course. Probable. Its probability concerns me. What I understand of Ninika's intelligence is that while she is by no means stupid, her new is not of the academic variety. Indeed, before she was provoked," offered Horst, "inspired to take up necromancy by you murdering her father? Circumstances. She seemed to have no scientific interest at all, apart from a very specific branch of biology, at any rate." He glanced at Horst, whose left eyebrow had risen on a tide of curiosity. "You would have liked her, then?" "Ah," said Horst, to whom all had become clear. "From Lady Bountiful to an evil fairy tale queen in a single bound seems prodigious," he nodded, conceding the point, "but not impossible." "You should be proud, Johannes." Horst's tone was hardly conciliatory. "She's your creation, after all." At this, Cabal colored slightly, but then subsided quickly. "Unkind, but true, I regret to say. Most of my more malignant creations are more easily dealt with, too." "I doubt she's going to succumb to a few sharp blows with a retort stand, no." "Oh, she probably would. Getting within a country mile of her with a retort stand is the issue. I digress. The point I was making is that her notes were nowhere to be found in her laboratory. Whatever she had culled from her books and her researches is contained within them, and those notes represent the nucleus of the threat she represents." "Threat? What threat? She's in Mercarvia. We're in England's green, and Pleasant Land. She's a long way away." Here Johannes Cabal furnished his brother with a look that spoke of disappointment, largely with himself, at trying to talk to Horst when he could be talking to some lichen which would probably understand the situation better. "She's very rich, ruthless, and motivated. Mercarvia really isn't that far away when one has access to at least one fast air vehicle. I doubt the catalyst is the only thing she appropriated from the Mercarvian aeronavy either. If she but knew of this house, a stick of bombs descending upon it from a cloudless sky would be a likely outcome. And don't tell me that she wouldn't risk the ire of the Royal Air Force by doing so. Losing a ship would be a small price for her as long as she was not aboard." "I don't believe revenge is her main concern at present, however. She must know I have Presbyter Johannes, and that will inform her actions. She knows I shall attempt to seek out the Fountain of Youth, be it actual or figurative. She will attempt to beat me to it. I am sure of it." "But you don't know where it is." "I know several places where it might be." They will have to be investigated until the correct one is found. How many is several? 5, scattered across Europe, Asia, and Africa. Horst blanched. That will take years. Months, but too many months. Given our resources, Ninika will almost certainly find the majority before us. Horst rose and paced up and down. Well, here's a pretty problem. Not at all if the sites are explored sequentially, yes. If, however, 2 expeditions go forth, then I think that tips matters back in our favor. Horst stopped in his pacing. We split up? I'm not sure that's a very good idea, Johannes. For one thing, there's the way I tend to burst into flames in daylight. That's limiting. And to be honest, I'm not sure I'd recognize a knife-thin sliver of conjectural reality if it bit me. Cabal smiled at him, or at least the furthermost point of his mouth rose. Trust you to do this by yourself? Ever the joker, Horst. Thanks. Horst said it without a reciprocating smile. No, there will be physical danger and there will be challenges of an intellectual nature. You can surely handle the former, but with all due respect. He did not finish the sentence, nor did he need to. Horst sat down heavily and crossed his arms. In truth, I have the opposite problem. There are things in this and other worlds that are unimpressed even by a Webley 577. What I propose, therefore, are 2 teams of 2. We shall procure the services of somebody able to look after themselves and me into the bargain for one duo, and somebody with perspicacity, wit, and intelligence to make up for your shortcomings, and those attributes to join you in the other. Horst shrugged off the slurs upon his intellect with brotherly ease. That's another quest in and of itself, surely. By the time you found these paragons, we might as well have tried to do it all ourselves in any case. I know where to find them already, said Cabal. That is not the hurdle. Persuading them is the rub. Well, for one, at least. The other will certainly prove more enthusiastic. At this point, Cabal's face did a strange thing, a sudden flexion and tautening that was brief, but that filled his brother with wonder. Did you just smile? I mean really smile, not one of those things you call a smile that frightens donkeys, but a real, actual smile? To which Johannes Cabal said nothing, but the ghost of that fleeting expression glowed upon his countenance for some time after. And that's where we're ending off. Presently. It was the second one, Denny, and yes, Lady Aoife, this is where the devil's Zarenya comes back. So we get Zarenya again for one whole more adventure. So when I said everybody comes back in a manner of speaking. Good evening to you. I knew you all would be excited. I knew you all would dig it. Yes, she will be back. You guessed correctly, Insomniac. Yes, the second one is Leonie. We also get Leonie and Zarenya meeting each other, which is a whole event in and of itself. And you may think that it ends there, but it doesn't. Some other characters that you didn't anticipate meeting each other will also meet each other, which is another very fun event. I'm sure you all will enjoy it. And we also have another new character. It is interesting. It is interesting. Because, in effect, if you remember the short story, at one point Cabal asks if it's possible for her to feed off of a woman. And she says that technically she can, and she is attracted to women, but she doesn't feed off of them. Because at some point she ends up talking to them, and then it just feels a little mean. So she is, in effect, pansexual. Like, she doesn't care who it is. She can feed off of anyone. But she chooses not to feed off women because of a sense of camaraderie with womankind, which I think is just hysterical for this one in particular. So I hope you will enjoy that. Oh, they do get outnumbered by women, the both of them. But keep in mind what they said. They're going to split the party. Horst needs someone who's smart, and Johannes needs someone who can protect him. So, by that means, the two people they are introducing to the party, we have Team Leonie and Horst, and then Team Johannes and Zarenia. So, thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that. Leonie and Horst, oh yes. And it does, and this is going to be so sick for Ray in particular, because it gets very Sherlock-y. So I very much am looking forward to Ray's opinion on this, because it's very much inspired by Sherlock. I'm sure someone's got it going in VC for Ray, because Ray is a lot of the time at Walmart by this time. Yeah. Don't worry, Ray will find out. Ray is gonna know. Ray is gonna get it. And I am... They kind of do end up being buddies a little bit. It's very cute. You'll enjoy it. But Ray, I know, is definitely gonna like all the Sherlock-y inspired nonsense that happens. It even gets very Hounds of Baskerville for a second. When someone said that earlier, I was like, ooh, just wait. Ray was summoned. Oh, yeah, Ray. Oh, I can't see. I got a white shirt on. All the comments are white. It's really tripping me up. I can only read them when they're near the bottom in the green part of the light. Yeah, it gets a little... It's very fun. And by contrast, Johannes and Zarenia get very... think Edgar Allan Poe meets Dante's Inferno-esque. I don't want to give it away, but the vibe is immaculate and also terrible. Ray's in stealth mode. Yes. I hope you all will enjoy it. And then they all come together as a group, as one big group. It's so spot. And I purposefully left it off right there because when we get into it next time, it's immediately like you're immediately going to be in it. It's going to be so much fun. I debated on whether to stop it at this break or the next break, like the paragraph breaks, because this one shifts around quite a lot, as I'm sure you noticed. It goes from Johannes doing research, then him and his brother being sentimental, to a bunch of dudes hiding in the bushes. It skips around a lot in terms of like paragraph breaks. I did debate on whether to leave off at this paragraph break or the next one. And I decided this one would make for a better break because it really picks up and immediately y'all are going to be laughing next time. You guys are going to have a great time. Yes, one big misfit family, sort of. Yeah. It's a very dysfunctional family, but hey, it's a family nonetheless. All right. Who is up for cat facts? Who's here at cat facts? Do we gotta vote? If you don't know what we do after this, if you're new and have never stayed this late before, or maybe just dropped in because I'm in Aizawa and you felt drawn to hear from the My Hero reference, that's just because I was recording like this. That's not what we do here. I'm going to read you a cat fact. People love cat facts because Ray sent me a giant book of cats because I love cats, and Ray is very supportive. And every week I tell you a little bit of a cat fact. And we took a bit of a break last time because we let Lady Aoife pick because it was Lady Aoife's birthday. And we are going to jump back in right back where we left off with mythological cats. And this week it is the Narasimha picture. I don't know if you can see it too well. There it is. Pictures are kind of hard to do on here. Narasimha is one avatar or earthly form of the Hindu god Vishnu. Like Sekhmet, Narasimha has the body of a human and the face and head of a lion. Vishnu is said to have 10 avatars in a specific sequence, each one with an important task to fulfill. Later ones, like Rama and Krishna, are themselves major deities within Hinduism. Narasimha's task is to defeat the evildoers and those who persecute religious believers, and Narasimha is often depicted in the middle of an attack. Hindus make up a large part of the tradition of ancient spiritual yoga, and Narasimha is both a popular yoga studio name and a popular iconography in a seated yoga position. The name Narasimha literally means man-lion. And that's your mythical cat for the day. Yay! We did the whole thing. We did the whole bit. This has been awesome. I've had a lot of anxiety this week, and this has been literally the highlight of my week. So thank you all for joining me. And we're gonna head right into it. When Dad gets over here, we're gonna play a board game, and I need to text Jasmine to get her butt over here because she keeps asking to join the board game night, and then misses it because I don't text her. So I gotta get off here. I gotta text Jasmine. I'm gonna let you all know. You're all gonna head over to the Discord, and we're all gonna chat in the Discord, and we're all gonna play a game. Right, Dad? Yes. Good night. Glad you all could make it. Dad, head over to my house. Okay, whenever you get this, yeah, thank you for joining me for story time. We do it every Tuesday at 8 Central. And you can join us next time. And in the meantime, you can go over to the YouTube and listen to all the ones you missed, or all the ones that you haven't listened to, and you can come back next week, refreshed and ready for some new content. And I will get the YouTube updated as soon as I finish editing the other ones. I appreciate your patience. I've had a lot to do, and I hope to see you again next week. Bye, guys.